But he was
You're
very...
shocked that he put it in the book?
No, he asked permission. And I gave him permission, if it's his book. And I think he was trying to say that he and I have a very special relationship. We tease all the time, and that's not very nice for me, but, you know, you got to tease a little bit. And he teases me unmercifully, but we're very close.
You had differing opinions, though, on pro-life, did you not?
I don't remember.
Yes, I did.
Shh, George?
You were never
It's okay.
that fired up about it.
No.
When I was president.
I wasn't president, nor was I president when George was president. But that's one issue. I'm not a one-issue person. I mean, I don't believe in that, and I don't think my Georges do either. I think they try to think of what keeps America safe and what is... You respect other people's feelings, religions, beliefs, and I do that too.
But you have your own opinions.
Of course I do. But I wasn't in office. I wasn't courageous enough to run. And I'm still not courageous enough to run.
So they quickly changed the subject to just talk about general family value platitudes. That gets off of the story that there was a fetus in the jar. Now, whether Barbara kept it or the housekeeper kept it doesn't change the fact that this is quite strange. Then, of course, you hear Poppy Bush pipe up in the background, and it's all so funny, and we're all such a happy family. We, of course, want to note, as long as we're talking about Poppy Bush, is he was, of course, in the White House on the night of September 10th, while George and Jeb were in Florida. He was also in Dallas, Texas, on the night of November 21st, 1963, interestingly enough, and we'll touch on that in just a few minutes. But our last note on this 11:25 News Purge, the elite bleat, they're obsolete, our few Oregon oddities, where we get from KVAL.com, thousands lined up in freezing rain for free Oregon dental clinic at the convention center. If you needed a photo of perhaps what's wrong with healthcare. Meanwhile, Oregon technology pioneer and major philanthropist Norm Winningstad committed suicide at the age of 85. And I don't know what to say after that. Strange days indeed. Quickly now, let's touch on our holiday-related stories, where the most interesting thing to me wasn't the opt-out story. And again, you got to wonder when stories reach such a critical mass, maybe what else is perhaps going on. So while we've all been talking about the TSA and laughing about not touching my junk, Congress critters are working on passing food safety bills that would essentially put Homeland Security over your garden. But the interesting angle on this story that I posted up on Wednesday, which was to be opt-out day, from NORAD.mil, commercial aircraft to fly in military airspace for holiday travel. NORAD will conduct simultaneous exercise flights to test response capability as FAA works to ease delays for Thanksgiving. The FAA prepped for a busy holiday season by working with the Department of Defense to clear the way for commercial aircraft to fly in airspace normally reserved for the military. We want to do everything we can to make it easier for yada yada. So they started just a few days ago, and apparently they're going to do it until Monday, the 29th, of course, Wednesday and this coming Sunday being the big, busy travel days. So we note, the DoD is also allowing commercial flights to use restricted airspace in other parts of the country, such as over the Gulf of Mexico, where we just noted to you a few weeks ago, or rather a few minutes ago. Oh, time flies. The Gulf recovery exec that died in a crash of convenience. Airspace over 29 Palms in California, and airspace over the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. Do you think the average family lining up to be groped by the TSA knew that their flight could be rerouted over a military missile installation? Which, of course, reminds us of our recent mystery missile, which again reminds us of TWA 800. But the related stories to this: White House North Lawn evacuated briefly after pilot flies into restricted airspace. More on that from nationaljournal.com. And our other holiday in America, as in holiday in Cambodia, and other police state updates. Threat level said air travelers opted out of opting out. Meanwhile, inside directives have come out showing the TSA trying to put it into policy that opt-outers be considered domestic extremists. Of course, if you're giving credence to anything they say is a threat to anything they say is important, you're a terrorist. Just like Section 802 of the Patriot Act. Speedo-clad protester entertains Salt Lake City airport travelers. But here's the bit. TSA turns off naked body scanners to avoid opt-out day protests. This is the angle you didn't hear from the mainstream media. They were saying, oh, there's no delays. No one's, the plebes aren't revolting at all. Everything's going smoothly. The TSA, in seemingly their first smart public relations move, essentially fast-tracked everybody and turned off a lot of the scanners. A lot of quotes from people all around the country. I even saw as close as Seattle. Because I don't believe we have the naked body scanners in the Portland airport just yet. And perhaps the agitated folks here in the sometimes progressive holdout, maybe we can hold it out. Airline passenger questioned after multiple bathroom trips. MyBottlesUp.com and their story of TSA agents took my son. EndOfTheAmericanDream.com asking the question, will TSA groping destroy tourism in the U.S.? And I believe we reported last week, I forget what elite bloodline think tank it was, noting from quite some time ago in the past that ultimately travel would be restricted. Does the TSA need an incident to convince the U.S. to accept the obscene pat-downs, or ultimately they just want to make us choose the body scanners? That's the trick. A related story, secret trigger and blueprint for emergency domestic military crackdown plan revealed. That's from hongpong.com. 22 incredibly revealing quotes about enhanced pat-downs and TSA groping. The return of Clear. All clear on bypassing airport security again, and it's all about money. More on that from consumerreports.org. It's just a different slave line. And again, we note and remind you that DHS head Chertoff got $350 million contract advising government X-ray scanners would solve the problems. This is all predicated, of course, on the phony underpants bomber, which we've debunked time and time again for you. Seemed to be an intelligence drill, flipped live. Furthermore, and we've already discussed Chertoff, we've already discussed Soros, but here's more profit ties between phony terror alerts, airport security, and L3 communications. And naturally, where all of this leads, the next step, and this is coming from Big Sister Napolitano, the head of Homeland Stupidity, that the next step for tight security, which is the euphemism here for loss of dignity and personal liberties and naked body scanners and groping. Next step for tight security could be trains, boats, metro. Could be. Let's quickly shift gears into the geopolitical situation as the Korean crisis escalates. Grand chessboard tension. And we'll take the article from Danger Room, but we'll note at the top that all of this may be a response to drills going on. North Korea attack may be response to drills. Longtime listeners know we always try and pay attention to the military exercises and the war games that go on. They seem to be the window into the nexus between the private military contractors and all the compartmentalized intelligence agencies. Drills in the morning of 9/11, drills in the morning of 7/7. It's not the diplomacy-minded former president who is ready to spy. It's the secretive nuclear submarine named for him. The surveillance and attack capabilities it's supposed to have could keep the tense situation on the Korean peninsula from spiraling out of control. In the wake of North Korean artillery barrage against South Korean island, the USS George Washington is sailing to South Korea to participate in joint exercises along with the aforementioned USS Jimmy Carter. A statement from the Navy's 7th Fleet, which patrols the Western Pacific, says the drill was planned before the unprovoked North Korean attack, just like the body scanners were planned to be rolled out before the underpants bomber. But this will, of course, demonstrate, quote, the strength of the South Korea-U.S. alliance and our commitment to regional stability through deterrence, end quote. In other words, to stave off another attack, not to initiate a retaliation. George Washington and Jimmy Carter, equipped with more than 75 planes, 6,000 sailors, and it's not alone. It's got the destroyers Lassen, Stetham, and Fitzgerald with it, and the missile cruiser Cowpens in tow. According to plugged-in naval blogger Raymond Pritchett, words going around Navy circles that the first surveillance assets that the United States had in the air over the Korean island battle were drones launched from the USS Jimmy Carter. Now, before we get to the other related geopolitical and war horror notes, we'll hit our last clip, and we'll take it from Webster Tarpley of tarpley.net, a frequent contributor to Russia Today. And, of course, he's the author of Surviving the Cataclysm, the unauthorized biography of George H.W. Bush, as well as the unauthorized biography of Barack H. Obama, in a way to show that these things are all connected. Let's hear a brief few moments from Webster Tarpley on the collapse of Irish zombie banks, the provoked Korean crisis that's all escalating the world financial breakdown crisis, and the, as we call it, grand chessboard tension.
Speaking of nuclear threats, North Korea and South Korea exchanged artillery fire near their disputed western border, raising all kinds of questions and concerns about what will happen in that region. Also worth mentioning, the dollar and the Swiss franc strengthened after the incident because demand for the currencies increased. Well, investigative journalist Webster Tarpley is here for more. Webster, so what is the connection there with the currency in this incident?
Well, it's a flight to safety. We have this incident with the Koreans. We've also got a big crisis in Ireland, which I think is actually bigger. But just on the Korean side, this, on the surface, this is the kind of circus we've seen quite a few times since the Gulf of Tonkin in 1964. It's a disputed border, and the South Koreans were holding maneuvers, and the North had protested, and then the shooting began. And since the border is disputed, who violated whose territory, or even who started shooting, I think we can't really know from a distance. Normally that would not be anything special. We've had it, again, quite a few times. What makes it more worrisome is that this is now the Yellow Sea, and this is a place where the U.S. and South Korea have insisted on having a presence very close to Beijing, very close to China. Chinese are very, very upset about